Good evening, everyone. Gabs here. Welcome to What's in the Glass. Sometimes I say digital beer stream. I don't think if I should say digital beer stream today is appropriate because we're going to talk about a slightly different beverage. But hey, you know, we are in East London in a way. It's all the same family, and you're going to find out by our guest today how much wine and beer have in common. And again, welcome to the digital stream. And my name is Gabs. I'm trying to be the best beer, drink, hospitality communicator I can. I started working in this industry 10 years ago. I'm still super passionate about it. Again, I think every single day I'm more passionate about it. Ask me why? Well, because we are a bunch of beautiful people worldwide. We're a bunch of very nice and skillful and passionate people. And I always try to update and understand new ways to communicate with the people. This is key for me. There is in our hospitality industry if people do not talk within each other. There are different ways to talk within different people. And that's why I started the experience, What's in the Glass, started in May last year. So just the beginning of the summer. I had a lot of time, a lot of drinks in my fridge. I thought, you know what, I'm going to go live in a show, drinking beer and chatting with people. It worked. This is our award-winning show, so we try to do our best. We also try to produce, with quite a lot of difficulties, a bigger show, something that gonna goes on big media, hopefully an important channel, something like that. We're working on it. It's called Turning the Tide. This is the official T-shirt. There is a crowdfunding campaign running right now until the end of the month. And what we're doing is just like giving the biggest exposure and voice to the best pubs in London. So if you want to have a look, you can find all the stuff on the internet. And many people sometimes saying, I'm a beer drinker, I'm a wine drinker. It doesn't really make any difference to me. There are good stuff and there is bad stuff. And we're here just talking about the good stuff. So the East London family, especially the East London pub and drinks family, is huge. And it's all very, very genuine. And if you probably went to Bethnal Green recently, you heard about Urban Winery somewhere behind the bridge in Bethnal Green. You can actually find quite easily because everyone in the borough knows about them. And Warwick is an incredible character. I met him a few times. I remember once we were in front of a lovely spot in central London, a Michele pub, and I had to avoid to go in the pubs with him. I will always feel very guilty about it because I thought it could have been a fantastic day out, night out, but we will have more once all of this is gone. So I don't want to say too much about Renegade Urban Winery because in a way I think that the best person is Warwick, the founder of it. So if you just making sure you are welcoming him with me. Hello, mate.
Good evening. Hiya.
Nice to see you. Happy to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for having someone who's not beery on the show.
Wait, let me put it this way. Someone didn't chuck hops in beverages. In a way, you know, we had something in common, I would say. We will go on that bit as well because it's pretty interesting. And welcome again to anyone that doesn't know yet what Renegade Urban Winery and what Warwick is. Would you mind to tell us about you?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, fundamentally, we are kind of what the name suggests. We're an urban winery, and what that really means in practice is that we make wine in urban environments. And so for us, our urban environment is East London. We're based in Bethnal Green, and we make wine. And I think that the first thing that people often say when I say we make wine is they say, "How can you make wine in London? Where are the vineyards?" It makes perfect sense. The truth is that most wine production is separated into two key components, the vineyard and the winery. One grows the grapes, one makes the wine. Often they're interconnected, but they're not always. And I think historically that separation hasn't really been spoken about. It's just like if you said to me, you're an urban brewery like at London Fields or Beavertown or Colonel, and I say, how can you make beer in London? Where is your field of grain and where are your hop farms? It's exactly the same analogy. Brewers and world-class craft breweries in the UK are experts and specialists in brewing beer, not at growing grain and growing hops. And we are exactly the same. We are an urban winery, and we specialize in making wine. We don't get involved in growing the grapes. We have a big oversight because it's super important, but essentially we focus only on the making. So that's kind of the overview.
As I said at the beginning, we call What's in the Glass. So we're super happy to support any sort of realities which are not strictly a beer. And most important, your concept about, you know, having the need in a way to create products that are embracing what really London and the London drinking scene is, and understanding what are the needs of the city itself. If you have to get, you know, grapes from somewhere else, I don't see any problem. And I'm gonna drink a beer from North London, from an Italian-based brewery. Based in a way, they were born Italians and then they moved to London, so they're now fully Londoners. It's called Aura Brewing, and it's a sour with berries. And may I ask you what you're gonna drink tonight with me?
Yeah, I'm actually drinking. Funnily enough, actually, I'm drinking an Italian in London as well. This is a wine that we make called Courtney. And Courtney is a wine, it's made from a grape called Nero di Troia that is grown in Puglia in the south of Italy. But we hand harvest the fruit, we bring it back to London, and we make all the wines in London. So this wine was born in Italy because the grapes were born in Italy, but the wine was fully made in London, just like a beer.
Wow.
And so yeah.
Cheers.
So cheers, here's to you, mate.
Lovely. Not probably many people realize that I'm not just Italian, but I'm actually coming from one of the most famous wine areas in the world, apparently, which is Burgundy in Tuscany. So I always heard this fact about, you're a big guy, but you're coming from a wine area. What's going on in here? And I'm always saying, you know, you follow your passion, you do what you have to do. But there is something that I always learn about wine, and it's like the way that you taste it, the way that you maximize it on table, the wine that you know, the way to really celebrate with it. Something that I'm sure that beer people should learn a bit more, instead of just drinking and drinking and drinking, right? The appreciation, I would say.
Yeah, maybe, but I think the beer world has gone quite a long way towards the way that the wine people appreciate wine. I mean, I know that whenever I pour a beer now at home, I generally use a wine glass because I like swirling it around and I like tasting it and looking at the color and moving it around. And wine glasses are generally really good vessels. I mean, that's almost a wine glass, you know. Essentially a glass that opens up and then closes down towards the top, so that you get all the aroma to one point. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's a similar thing. So I'm just looking at all this tech that you're using. It's all new to me. It's very clever.
we do have a comment from your neighbor, Mother Kelly's. Funny enough, very good beer spot, which in a way you're really familiar with, right? Yeah.
I mean, Mother Kelly's and the whole team. I mean, their Bethnal Green tap room is literally probably 35 steps from our front door. And so they've kind of set themselves up in that part of the world as the kind of go-to destination for high quality beer. Yeah, it's just across the road. But yeah, I mean,
you touched a very interesting point before. You mentioned the fact that the concept of urban winery. This is something which is really fascinating, and I never heard anything like that before coming to London. Have you been inspired by other similar experiences when you traveled, or it was a dream of yours and you just opened up? How did it started?
Okay, yeah. So normally, So the background is urban wineries are a kind of new concept in England. They haven't really. There's a few of them in London, and they're becoming more popular. But essentially, this urban winery movement really started in the States, mainly on the West Coast. And the history was that historically, because wine is made from a fresh, raw ingredient, grapes, you want to essentially make the wine from freshly harvested grapes generally within 24 hours to 36 hours of picking the fruit to make a really high quality product.
Sure.
And there historically just wasn't the cold chain logistics and refrigeration in place to make wines at long distances from the source vineyard. And kind of the Californians and the Australians really became quite good in moving fruit, moving high quality grapes across the country in chilled vehicles. And as a consequence, there's probably about 45 or 50 urban wineries in the States now, mainly on the West Coast, in Washington, in Oregon, in California, but also in Texas, Colorado, and New York. And there's one in Italy, in Milan. There's two in Paris. There's two in Sweden. There's one in Finland. There's one in Belgium, and essentially it's exactly the same as the craft beer movement in that people want to make high quality drinks in the city they live in using new and interesting and high quality techniques, but really high quality ingredients. And the beauty of making wine in London is that there really is no history of winemaking, in the modern sense. And so if you make wine in Italy or in France or in Germany, where there's generations of family-based history and legacy and techniques and styles that have been made, not to mention the government-imposed appellation rules that dictate sometimes how wines have to be made, the consequence is that in most old world countries where grapes are grown and wines are made, people make quite safe styles according to local techniques and local principles. Yeah. The beauty of London is that we don't have any of that. So we can buy the best grapes in the UK and the best grapes in Europe and just throw away the rule book and decide to make wines in a modern style according to what we think people want, and using winemaking techniques from the new world, but on old world fruit. And that for me is the beauty of making wine in London. It's the freedom that you have.
And what is the reaction that you normally have from a bit more orthodox wine producers or wine people? Like, are they getting close to you with curiosity as much as a real ale drinker will go to a craft brewery asking them what is going on in here? Or do you find a bit of resistance? What is the conversation normally?
So the way it started was we first made our first wine in 2016. And I didn't come from a winemaking background. I used to have a life in financial services. And so I didn't come from a winemaking background. I didn't know anybody in the wine industry or the drinks industry. We'd hired a world-class winemaker from New Zealand, but essentially we were startup, raw, no reputation, nothing. And so people were very skeptical. The quality of the first vintage of wines was good, but they are what I rudely call copycat wines. They were nothing special. Essentially, when we first made our wines, we would go to the vineyards where we buy our fruit from, and we would ask the winemaking team there, what should we do with your fruit? Because they knew it the best. And as a consequence, we would copy their styles, and we would essentially make exactly the same wine from the same grapes, using the same technique, but in London. So essentially, it was more expensive with a different label, and it was pointless. The feedback was very clear very quickly, which is, and it's very sensible. If I want to drink a Sangiovese Chianti that tastes like a Tuscan Chianti, why don't I just buy a Tuscan Chianti? And so it became very clear very quickly for us that we had to change what we were doing. There was no point copying styles. Again, it was about what could we use here? We have the freshness and the opportunity to create new wine styles. So let's look again at the grapes and look again at techniques and try and work out what could be done that people aren't doing that we think would work really well. And that's what we started to do more and more of. But going back to your question, there was a lot of skepticism. There was an open-mindedness from a lot of the vineyards we work with, because they were also curious about the potential of their fruit, their grapes to be made in a different way. But they were happy for us to take the risk with that product rather than them. And then on the consumer side, people were open-minded. People in London are open-minded, and the UK generally, towards new things. If they can see that the people behind it believe in what they're doing, then they'll do it well.
Yeah.
But there was a skepticism, and I think it's taken us 4 or 5 years now to actually finally build a reputation that we try new things. They generally work out well, and we aim to make good, well-made, well-balanced, drinkable wines of a high quality. But sometimes they're not always what we expect, and we're in that experimental, innovative phase. And we haven't got a core and like a experimental range at the moment. Kind of everything is just what we want to make.
I love the fact that most of the beer people that I had the pleasure to meet in these recent years from, New York and from some of the Scandinavian countries, but even like mainland Europe, when we were thinking where to go out and where to, celebrate a birthday rather than just meet up, yes, it was easy because probably next to Renegade there is a good brewery, which is, Old Street Brewery. But I had the feeling that more and more and more, especially after a certain time, we were ending up to come and try your wines, which is a very interesting fact because, you see people normally have a certain type of attitude, which in most of the people then maybe don't realize the urban winery concept. It doesn't let them feel like, comfortable in a way, even with the wine glass in hand, or at least this is from my experience, my friends, and some of the people that I'm frequenting. Then coming to your place is just like revolution. People change mind completely. And again, the devil which comes with the taste and the flavors and the concept of your place as well, it really is becoming the leader of the situation. And I love.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think we honestly have much more in common with brewers than we do with most winemakers in our attitude, mainly because we have an open-minded approach about where to source ingredients from, and we're always looking for flavors and quality ingredients rather than focusing just on the growing. We're more interested in the final product in the glass, and also, as you said, we like innovation and looking at new things. And one of the products that we made a couple of years ago that we're just about to relaunch is. We also experiment with hops. So we in 2018-19 we made a product called Bethnal Bubbles, which was essentially a dry hopped English sparkling. So we'd make a base English sparkling wine from English grown grapes. We'd then dry hop it back in 18-19 it was Citra Mosaic, whole hop flowers. It was about 8 grams per liter for a week long infusion, and then we would do secondary fermentation just like champagne in a bottle. We're relaunching that again soon. We've got a different base grape. The new grape is called Solaris. It's a more aromatic textural grape. And
where
the
is
new
coming from, if I can ask?
It's from Hertfordshire, so just north of London. If you know where Bishop Stortford is, on the way to Stansted Airport. that really famous grape growing region of the world near Stansted Airport.
Oh man, I love this.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah. But this one's different kind of grape base wine, and the hops are we've upped the hop ratio to 10%, and we've used 2020 crop Nelson Sauvin and Citra. So it's a little bit less citrusy than before with the Mosaic, and it's a bit more tropical with the Nelson. And it's the old one was quite tart. The grapes that we picked for the first one were picked very acidic because it was supposed to be a sparkling, which we'd normally add sugar to, but we didn't. And then the second one is actually a slightly more balanced fuller mouthfeel profile, so it's a bit more approachable. This new one actually is a little bit more tropical, less citrusy, and a bit more approachable, like a bit more sessionable, even though it's almost 12% alcohol. 12% alcohol.
Wow. And again, you've been giving grape skins for an hard seltzer then we made in London Fields, a London Fields brewery as well. So this is really proof your attitude of trying new things and get involved wherever there is innovation and flavors and taste, which is a beautiful thing in my opinion.
Oh yeah. Well, we love a bit of a collaboration. I mean, we've given grape skins for a few years now to East London Liquor Company to make an English brandy. We've done a couple of cider collaborations, a couple of beer collaborations. With wine production, you have so much leftovers, whether it's lees or grape skins, pre or post ferment, and they still have lots of texture and tannins and residual sugar. And you might as well use them again if you can.
Absolutely. Well, I would love to talk more about the products, but I really want to touch a couple of sides more of every business is in these days, because I think it's pretty key to understand how the pandemic have impacted businesses, especially in this city in London. But whatever we can ask, and I'll be very, very curious to hear what happened at Renegade since 12 months ago.
Yeah, so the simple answer is that in terms of our business model, we make about 38,000 bottles of wine at the moment. And of that 38,000, about 80% is sold direct to restaurants and bars. So what in the industry you typically call the on-trade. We then sell about 10% of our product in our own tap room. It's only 10% of the volume, but it's actually more like 30% of our total revenue because obviously the margin direct to consumer is better. Sure. And we only did about 5% to the off-trade shops and direct to consumer. I mean, we were diversified as a business, but we're nowhere near diversified enough to basically weather those kind of shocks. So when the pandemic hit in March, that was kind of the beginning of our bottling season. So from a winemaking perspective, everything continued. In fact, from a winemaking perspective, it was better because there was no customers in the tap room, which meant we never had to open it and we could use it fully as a winery. So Andrea, our winemaker, and the team were happy because no customers were ever in the way. Yeah. And essentially what that meant was that we could bottle really efficiently throughout most of March, April, May, and June. But what it did mean was that our revenue dropped off a cliff. And it didn't just drop off a cliff. A lot of the restaurants and bars that we supplied also just decided not to pay us. In this industry, you work a lot on credit, and people who are supposed to pay you in 30 days sometimes decide they don't want to pay you anymore because their restaurant is closed, they've got rent demands, and their most important focus is staff. So they want to pay wages more than anything else. So before the furlough system came in, and that only came in, remember it was only announced in the beginning of middle to April. So restaurants were focusing solely on paying their staff, which is what they should do. But as a consequence, revenue dropped off a cliff, and then we just had to diversify. We had a massive push into direct to consumer. Selling it. So we started doing next day free delivery anywhere in the UK, no minimum order. Again, there's no money in that. There's no profit margin in that, but at least you get some revenue in. And it was at times like this, it's more about just having revenue coming in, not actually making any money. So yeah, we switched. We tried to focus more on bottle shops and wine shops, and we focused more on direct to consumer. And we converted the winery bar into a takeaway shop. So we put shelves up, we put our wines up, and throughout the summer we started selling frosé, like a frozen rosé slush puppy.
I saw that
to try and entice people in. I mean, the honest truth is, it's been a difficult year. We are very lucky that we've had amazing support from our customers, our shop customers. I mean, even bigger players like Harvey Nichols and Whole Foods were really supportive, and they're not big revenue streams, but they've been really kind to us. Yeah, we've been weathering the storm, and then kind of from in wine production, unlike in beer production, it's very seasonal. I mean, it may be in beer too, but in wine it's very seasonal in that you can only make wine between the beginning of September and the end of October, beginning of November, because that's when the grapes ripen in the Northern Hemisphere. So kind of from August until the end of November, we were just making wine, and so we just kept on as if life was normal. The only issue was that there was loads of money going out. I mean, we spent about £100,000 a year in those 3 months just on grapes and logistics. Yeah. So yeah, we basically bled cash to the point of like starvation, and with the hope that 2021 would bring better things. I mean, to be honest, the beginning of this year has been the worst time we've ever had for sales. Again, because no dry January, people were really doing it, I think. It's also the post-Christmas crash of people just having spent any money they had at Christmas and just taking a bit of time. And also it was freezing and no one wanted to go out. And also people have been really nice and supported us for the last 12 months. And you can only ask people to be really supportive for so long. I feel very grateful that we've had the support of our customers, and I think we can't expect them to keep buying our wine month in, month out for years without things reopening. So I think we're now in that zone where it's like, let's just prepare to reopen and just see what happens, you know.
And there is a lot, to support in these days. We just realized right now, just even in the beer industry, there are something like 15 crowdfunding campaign to try to save breweries, save pubs, making pubs doing the right, decisions, the right shift. You can see from one of the Kellys as well saying, it's just like there is a support out there. But as you mentioned, adaptation in London, I'm sure has been possible, has been easy. But there are other challenges on the door, if not already in the door. You just mentioned one before we were connecting, which is Brexit. And with Brexit, I'm also showing you a comment from a very good friend of mine from Italy, which is saying that it will be impossible to have labels like yours in wines over there.
Yeah, I mean, again, because London and the UK has not really got that much of a tradition of wine, the whole point behind our labels is that we put the pictures of our customers on the bottle. So that's Courtney.
Yeah.
So each one of our wines has a picture of our customer. If they have no or next to no connection to our business, they're not our like restaurant customers. They're not friends of ours. We don't pick our friends. We don't pick, and in fact, it's a problem because we can't pick anyone we know. Otherwise, it'll be too incestuous. And the way it works is that if we make the same wine from the same vineyard the year later, we put the same person on the label, but 1 year older. So the wine, so Courtney will get older and older and older as we make more of this wine. But coming back to your question, yeah, Brexit. I've known Brexit is going to be a problem for a while, and the truth is, Brexit is more of a nightmare than I thought. The biggest issue for us is that as of the 1st of January, and this is quite a big deal to some people who like a few of our wines. As of the 1st of January, it is now illegal to make wine in the UK from grapes that are not grown in the UK.
No.
Yeah.
I can't believe this.
So this wine that I'm drinking, Courtney, from Puglia grapes, can't make it anymore legally. Now, this was a technical consequence of Brexit rather than a strategic change. What happened was that when DEFRA, the Department for Rural Affairs, Agriculture and Fishing, when they were reviewing EU law to convert to UK law, they simply took EU law and scrubbed out the letters EU and wrote UK. So it was already a law that you can't make wine in the EU from non-EU grapes. That was already a rule to protect the grape supplies in Europe. But the UK just copy and pasted it. I mean, and it made no sense. It's almost like, imagine in the beer space, if the UK government had done the same and they'd banned all foreign hops and all foreign grain. I mean, it's that serious for us, you know.
It will be the death of, I don't know, 9/10 of every beer style produced in the UK that is not bitter or mild.
Yeah, and here's my philosophy is that grapes are grown and wines are made, and for beer, hop and malt and grain are grown, but the beers are made. The beers are made by people with skills, using techniques and using high quality ingredients. And the funny thing is with cider too, people don't quite realize that British cider doesn't mean that all the apples are grown in the UK. Most cider in the UK, as far as I'm aware, and don't hold me to this, but I've been told this, is made from imported apples. Because once the apple goes from a physical raw ingredient to a pressed juice to a fermented juice, it's then made. And it then becomes a British-made product. And so my controversial argument would be that all of our wines, even these ones from Italian grapes, are English wines because they're made in England using new techniques, English techniques, London innovative ways. And my winemaker's Italian, so does that mean that all of our wines can never be English because he's Italian? You know.
Well, that's controversial, man. But again, hey. What is the solution then? Like concentrating mostly on British grown grapes at the moment.
Yeah. So there's a few things we're working on. The first thing we're working on is the fact that can we get the law changed in time for this harvest? And so I'm dealing with DEFRA, the Wine and Spirits Trade Association, and some MPs to try and get the law changed. The law can be changed. It can be written into the agriculture bill to allow grapes from all over the world to be vinified in the UK. But how long that will take, I don't know. the other idea is that there's a potential that we can still make wines from overseas grapes, but it depends on how we market it on the label. We could change it from being a wine product to a fruit wine. Just the fruit is grapes. I don't know. There's also a product in the UK called British wine that is made from imported juice. And again, their rationale is that it's made in Britain, so it's British wine, even though it's from imported juice. We've never declared our wines as those products because I think it's misleading. Yeah. It's misleading to call this wine British wine when the grapes are Italian, but it's made in London. So we prefer the way it's labeled, which is wine made in London from grapes grown in Italy, which is truthful and makes sense. Yeah. So there's a few things. We could continue doing what we do, but market it differently. We may have to not do it at all and use only English grapes, or we could lobby Parliament and try and get the law changed. The honest truth is, I'm not as worried as I probably should be, because I think that actually the UK is growing some incredible fruit these days, and the potential to make interesting wines in the UK is massive. And actually, I think most people's interest in our business is with the wines that are made from English grapes, because they are the ones that are often the most surprising. But it's just a shame not to be allowed to use incredible Pinot Noir from Italy, or amazing Tempranillo from Rioja, or great Spat Burgunder from the Pfalz. It just seems stupid.
If it's like one of these political revenges that someone then doesn't even drink the wine, it doesn't even understand what is the culture around there, just trying to use as an excuse to, making these decisions. But
yeah, no, I've been reassured apparently that this is not a strategic change or a repercussion of Brexit. It was just a technical outcome of the law. I mean, but whatever it is, that's what it is at the moment, and we've got to work our way around it. But again, we've got all the 19 still in bottle aging. We've got all the 20 still in barrel to go to bottle. So there's no issue with supply or diversity on our wine styles for the next couple of years. I just like to get it resolved within the next 18 months, really. But the other thing is that we're also launching a sister brand called Evolution, which which the Bethnal bubbles will come under, and that whole range will allow us. So with all of our wines, they're made from grape to glass in London, and they're not cheap because the grapes are expensive and we put a lot of love into it, and we're a small producer. But there is an aim. I would like to be able to make wines at a slightly more affordable price point. So in case people aren't aware, most of our wines are around about 24 quid a bottle. It's not crazy, but it's not cheap. But I would love to be able to make wines at a slightly lower price point. And if we do that, it means we have to cut little bits of the steps out. Not reduce the quality, but change the way we do things. So for example, maybe we'd bottle somewhere else, or we would press the grape somewhere else. But I think so. If we're not going to do everything in London, every single thing, and if the wines have a slight influence of beer, so they're hopped or something else, then they're going to come under this Evolution brand. And so we're launching 3 wines soon. Or well, technically they're not wines; they're aromatized wine-based drinks. But let's see what happens.
Is this the technical term? Aromatized
wine-based drink.
Wine-based drink.
Yeah, so if you use wine products or grape products and you put things in it that aren't allowed, so for example, hops are not permitted in wine production. If you do something that changes the flavor profile and hence aromatizes the wine, you have to declare it as a separate product. It's called aromatized wine-based drinks. Wow. I mean, it makes a bit of sense. It also makes not much sense because if you think about wine production, oak aging, not only does it add micro-oxidation, but it also aromatizes the wine dramatically with wood. But every Chardonnay that's oaked isn't called aromatized wine-based drink. But these are the technicalities of hundreds of years of wine law. So who are we to change it?
I love the fact that exactly you are in a mission. It's not just about producing the best wine, the best products you can. Right now, you're making. You're changing the culture. You're trying to change the culture. You're trying to change the law for good, and to make sure that maybe other experiences like yours will pop up in Leeds rather than, I don't know, West Sussex rather than. I mean, I don't want to talk about Cornwall because apparently there are some amazing grapes over there for sparkling wines. Tell me if I'm wrong, right?
Yeah, well, there are some great producers all over the UK, mainly south of Birmingham. Yeah, there's a few in Cornwall. And there's some in Devon. But they don't all get. I mean, here's a bit of controversy. I won't mention any names, but not all of those producers get their grapes from Cornwall and Devon. We buy a lot of our grapes from Essex, and there are some very large producers, according to UK size, of wines in Devon and Cornwall that buy grapes from Essex.
Wow.
But on the bottle it says XYZ Devon Chardonnay. You know.
Yeah, I love the fact that most of the the journalism and the magazines that are now focusing on products always relying, not always, but there is like with breweries, it's almost fine to show the actual mechanism, the tanks, the maturation tanks, the fermenting tanks. With wine, you must show the heart. You must show the actual, the raw material, the vineyards,
yeah.
or the wine.
Oh, mate.
The reason, the poetry, right?
So this is what I think. Since I've been inside the wine industry, this is what I think is wrong with everything. And I think it's the same that's happened in restaurants. I mean, okay, so 20 years ago, I mean, me and you are too young to remember restaurants 25 years ago. But in the UK and all around the world, 25, 30 years ago, when people went to restaurants, you know who they wanted to meet? They wanted to meet the owner, because it was the restaurateur who was the celebrity, right? Now it's the chef. Everyone wants to learn about cooking and become the chef. And the same thing happened in beer. Everyone wants to see the brewing and the brewers and the equipment and learn about the technique, the style, the hop side, the cold side, the malt they use, the hops they use. Was it pellet? Was it flowers? What was the temperature? Was it nitrogenized? Was it CO2 gas? They want to know, right? Yeah. With wine, historically, it's always been about the vineyard and about the place. And what has sold wine historically has been the vision of vineyards, the vision of people picking grapes with their wooden baskets and meandering through the vineyards. No one has focused on the vineyard laborers who have to trim and operate everything in the vineyard. No one talks about pressing techniques, temperature of fermentations, skin contacts, yeast strains used, wild fermentations, filtration, fining, isinglass, milk protein, egg protein, tannic structure, tannic additions, tartaric acid additions, malic acid additions, double salt additions, barrel types, micro-oxidation. No one talks about this, or riddling techniques, or Lees contacts, or no one talks about the winemaking. And I often get accused. I almost accuse myself sometimes of being what they call like a terroir denier. This idea that everything is about the grape, And so with a product as basic as wine, that it's one single ingredient, a grape, the quality of that underlying fresh grape, how it's grown, the land it's grown on, how it's grown in terms of fertilizers or copper or sulphur use in the vineyard, everything else, that is massively, massively important. And I don't for a second tell anybody that the way that fresh fruit is grown is not important. What I do deny is that it's 99% of the product. I actually think it's more like 40% of the product, because to make good wine, you have to start with good grapes. But essentially, wines are made. They're not naturally occurring in landscape. They are made by people. And it's the people behind wines and the techniques they use and the equipment they use and the love they put in that makes a wine what it is. And so I just think that I'm hoping that the world of wine will navigate a bit more towards the making and give winemakers, not me, but people like Andrea, our winemaker, the attention they deserve, because they're the people that really make the wines in our glass. It's not Mother Nature that makes the wine. It's nature that helps cultivate the fruit. And another analogy, because I'm full of them, because that's all I got, is it's just like say beef. If you go to a restaurant and you have the most incredible piece of Wagyu off the bone ribeye, right? When it comes to your table, perfectly cooked and seasoned and butter glazed and rested, no one says to themselves, "My God, that farmer! What an incredible farmer!" But they say, "Well, someone's butchered and hung and cooked this steak to perfection." And it's the same thing with grapes. If I give an A5 Wagyu to a 3 Michelin star chef, he'll probably turn it into something incredible. If I give it to a pot washer from KFC, he'll probably burn the hell out of it, and it's almost inedible. It's the same thing with grapes. You can take the world's best grapes, but if you don't have a winemaker that knows what he's doing, you might as well just just anyway, that's these are a few of my analogies that I'm hoping to try and give people the impression that wines are made, and the making's very important, and it's not just about the growing.
Wine is an open conversation as much as it's beer in these days. People like to talk about this stuff, and listening stories and listening point of views like the one that you just gave us right now is, in my opinion, the one of the most important point of conversations that people can have in these days. So I'm going to make sure we will end up to go to a very orthodox wine festival, maybe the London Wine Fair, who knows, and trying to terrorize most of the people out there. They are sniffing the soil of the north of France rather than...
I tell you what, here's a funny one. Here's one of the ones that I always piss myself at.
Hey.
I know we're going to run out of time, but this one just humor me a minute. Often when people drink white wines, like if they drink like Sancerre style Sauvignons or whatever, they'll taste the wine and then they'll say to themselves, "God, it's so minerally, the minerally texture." And then people will go to the vineyard and the winemakers, and shame on them, and the salespeople, they will tell you about the soil, and they will tell you about the limestone and the minerals in that soil, and say this is what gives the minerality. Nonsense. If it was that simple, vineyards would sprinkle on minerals on. It's such marketing bollocks. But the problem is, people have been trained that way for hundreds of years. And again, what's their aim? Their aim is to create a story and a vision around that product that sells their wine. Does it have to be that truthful? Dunno. But if we can do anything along this wine journey, is that we can tell you the truth about what we've learned about the bollocks that people will tell you.
I love this. And especially in an industry where the products, as you said, can reach prices, can reach, status, which are completely nonsense. Like, I remember I used to go to Florence to some very, famous, Fiorentina steak restaurants. And the people there were like, would you like to have a very old Chianti with it? And I was just like, well, hey, whatever, let's go for it. Brilliant, cool. And they were like, yeah. I mean, there are some different ranges of prices. And we're just like, I want to hear now. And they were going up to 3-0, if not sometimes more than that. And I was just thinking like, yeah, fair enough. I understand. It's just not my word. I don't want to be part of it. I'm running away because I just don't want to be part of it. But since when I met Renegade and I met you, and you made me find wine appealing again, because I know more, because you don't take a piece of me as a consumer, as a friend, as someone comes to your tap room. I just invite more people to come and see you and drink your wine and have a conversation with you wherever it's possible,
Yeah. Well, wine prices and wine quality and your taste, there's almost no correlation between any of them. Very expensive wine, especially, like Super Tuscans or Burgundies or Bordeaux's, it's predominantly supply and demand in its marketing. It doesn't make it a much better wine that you will like. And again, people's palate and sensory perception and appreciation of wines of that style and that age, it's very particular. It's very specific. And I went to a really poncy wine tasting a couple of years ago, and people were opening like 1972 Gaias and all these old Bordeaux's. And honestly, if you'd given me them blind, I would have thought they were crap, because they're oxidized, they're a bit different, they're a bit funky. But they're not necessarily what everyone wants to drink. But again, there's the snobbery behind it because they've become expensive.
Yeah. I'm in London. I had some, not great adventure sometimes when I went out to some great places. But actually, most of the experience that I wanted and I decided to go for were brilliant enough. And there are beautiful places, especially in Bethnal Green Road, the Hackney Road, all around the area, which you can find justice. And Warwick, I feel like I want to talk with you for days, weeks. And I think I need to invite you again, especially when you're going to release your new Bethnal Bubble, or whatever we can do together on a show. That'd be lovely.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, well, that's hopefully coming out in about 3 weeks. Hopefully. It's ready. We just need to label it up.
Cool. All right. And also, I invite you, check out this new social media all about vocal chats, because you could be a rock star in there. You can break some walls in that place. And it makes sure I'll invite you into. What's
it called again?
I think it's Clubhouse or something like that.
Yeah,
We'll see.
fair enough,
We'll
mate.
see. Well, I would like to thank everyone that watch us and gonna watch after it, and has been brilliant. And I also learned a lot of things, and I'm not the only one, as you can see, Sarah Hyde say it. And Warwick, stay safe, and I hope to see you very soon and give you a big hug and drink some wine with you.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Have a good one, guys. See you tomorrow.